Hello and good day, guten Tag. Welcome to today's press conference on COVID-19 updates. It is Thursday, 15th of July, and we have a very special guest today. Welcome to His Excellency, Federal Minister of Health, Jens Spahn. We of course also have Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, WHO Director General. We have Dr. Katharina Böhm, Chef de Cabinet, Dr. Mike Ryan, Executive Director, Maria van Kerkhove, Technical Lead on COVID, Dr. Bernhard Schwartländer, who is Special Advisor to the Director General, and Chief Scientist Dr. Soumya Swaminathan, and we have other guests and colleagues online. Simultaneous translation is available in the official languages and also in German, so journalists attending can also ask in German. With this, I'll hand over to the Director General for the opening remarks and welcoming our guests.
Dankeschön, Christian. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Or should I say, Guten Morgen, Guten Tag, and Guten Abend. Thank you for joining us today, and I would like to say heartily welcome to my friend Jens Spahn, the Federal Minister of Health of Germany. And may I add, vielen Dank, Jens, for your personal support over the past few years, and especially the past difficult 18 months, and for the incredible support of the German government and people for WHO and for global health. I would especially like to express my concern and condolences over the floods that are currently affecting Germany, and I offer my deep condolences to those who have lost someone they love, and my sincere hopes that those who are missing will be found soon. So welcome once again, and I would like to invite you to make your opening comments.
Yes, dear Tedros, ladies and gentlemen, meine Damen und Herren, the first sentences I do in English and I switch to German. Actually, it's good to be here again. It's more or less a year ago that I was here with the French colleague Olivier Véran to show again, actually, the commitment we as the Federal Republic of Germany and the European Union have to the work of the WHO. Und deswegen auch vielen Dank für den herzlichen Empfang hier heute. Wir sind uns einig, die Pandemie ist noch nicht vorbei, auch wenn einige Länder mittlerweile erfreulich weit fortgeschritten sind in ihren Impfkampagnen, ist es für den größten Teil der Welt noch der Beginn der Impfkampagne. Viele müssen noch geimpft werden. Und ich sage auch immer in den Diskussionen in Europa, in Deutschland, es ist in unserem eigenen Interesse, dass die Welt geimpft wird, dass jeder auf der Welt Zugang zu Impfstoffen bekommt. Diese Pandemie ist erst vorbei, wenn sie für alle auf der Welt vorbei ist. Und deswegen unterstützen wir mit der WHO, unterstützen wir die WHO und mit der WHO die Programme, um die Impfstoffe tatsächlich in alle Länder zu bringen, um sie verfügbar zu machen unter dem Projekt ACTA. Wir werden heute zeichnen eine Vereinbarung zwischen der WHO und der Bundesrepublik Deutschland, dass Deutschland 260 Millionen € im Rahmen der Unterstützung konkret für die Weltgesundheitsorganisation, für die WHO bereitstellen wird, um damit die Entwicklung, Herstellung und Verteilung von Covid-19-Test-, Behandlungsmethoden, Therapeutika und vor allem auch Impfstoffen zu unterstützen. Als Deutschland haben wir uns zudem verpflichtet, mindestens 30 Millionen Impfdosen über COVAX an Drittstaaten zu geben. Ich würde aus heutiger Sicht sagen, wir werden in der Lage sein, auch deutlich mehr als diese 30 Millionen Dosen zur Verfügung zu stellen. Das ist der Startpunkt und wir werden in den nächsten Wochen und Monaten absehbar auch in der Lage sein, weitere Dosen mit der Welt zu teilen und den Ländern auf der Welt, die sie am meisten brauchen. Deutschland ist aus Überzeugung einer der größten Geldgeber für COVAX und ACTA mit 2,2 Milliarden €, die wir zur Verfügung stellen. Die 260 Millionen jetzt für die WHO sind ein Teil davon. Denn das zeigt, dass Deutschland seine Aufgabe und seine Verpflichtung sehr ernst nimmt zur internationalen Krisenbekämpfung. Das zeigt aber eben auch, dass wir die WHO sehen in einer leading role, in einer führenden Rolle für die internationale Gesundheitspolitik und dass wir der WHO vor allem eine führende Rolle zumessen in der Bekämpfung von globalen Gesundheitskrisen. Nur mit einer starken WHO werden wir diese Corona-Pandemie überwinden können. Nur mit einer starken WHO werden wir künftige Krisen überwinden können. Und daher ist Deutschland aus Überzeugung mittlerweile der größte Geldgeber für die Jahre 2020 und 2021 für die WHO. Knapp 1 Milliarde $ stellt die Bundesrepublik Deutschland in den Jahren 2020 und 2021 der WHO für ihre Arbeit zur Verfügung und ist damit mittlerweile tatsächlich der größte Geldgeber. Das ist für mich aber erstmal ein Anlass zur Freude, aber ich möchte das mit einer Ermunterung verknüpfen, auch an alle anderen Mitgliedstaaten. Die WHO kann nur so gut sein, wie wir sie auch sein lassen als Mitgliedstaaten, wie wir sie ausstatten, auch in den Ressourcen und auch in den finanziellen Ressourcen. Und wenn die WHO auch nur ansatzweise in der Lage sein soll, all die Anforderungen, all das, was auch an Aufgaben ihr zugeschrieben wird in dieser Pandemie und darüber hinaus tatsächlich zu erfüllen, dann muss sie eben auch entsprechend finanziell ausgestattet sein. Und deswegen möchte ich auch alle anderen Mitgliedstaaten ermuntern, mit uns gemeinsam für vor allem auch eine nachhaltige, jetzt nicht nur im Moment der Krise, sondern nachhaltige und dauerhafte, gute finanzielle Ausstattung der WHO zu werben. Eine weitere Lehre aus der Krise ist, dass wir diese Zusammenarbeit noch verbindlicher machen müssen, gerade auch zu Pandemiezeiten. Wir werben sehr stark mit anderen Mitgliedstaaten für den Pandemievertrag, der auch heute in einer Arbeitsgruppe hier diskutiert wird, einmal mehr. Was mir dabei sehr, sehr wichtig ist, ist, dass wir zu mehr Verbindlichkeit kommen, auch was die internationalen Gesundheitsvorschriften angeht. Die International Health Regulation, die gibt es schon seit einigen Jahren, aber die Wahrheit ist, wir haben sie bisher auch nicht verbindlich deswegen ausgestalten können, weil auch die Möglichkeiten zur Kontrolle, zur Nachvollziehbarkeit immer nur so gut sein können, wie auch da die Mitgliedstaaten, die WHO, die Kontrolle dann auch möglich machen. Und deswegen ist es sehr, sehr wichtig, eben, dass die Kooperation im Fall der Fälle dann auch eine sehr hohe ist. Zum einen, um die internationalen Gesundheitsvorschriften zu überprüfen, aber auch im Fall eines Ausbruches einer Krise dann entsprechend eingreifen zu können. Und deswegen bin ich dankbar, dass es eine erste Untersuchungsmission gegeben hat in China, in Wuhan, zum möglichen Ursprung des Virus. Ich möchte aber sehr dafür werben, dass das jetzt tatsächlich die erste Phase war, dass weitere Untersuchungen folgen. Wir haben ein hohes Interesse daran, die internationale Weltgemeinschaft, dass der Ursprung dieses Virus nachvollzogen werden kann. Und deswegen möchte ich sehr dafür werben, auch bei unseren chinesischen Kolleginnen und Kollegen dafür werben, dass diese Untersuchungen fortgesetzt werden können und zu einem von der Wissenschaft geleiteten Ergebnis führen. Covid-19, zusammengefasst, meine Damen und Herren, hat uns vor Augen geführt, ein Virus ist immer nur international und gemeinsam gut zu bekämpfen. Dafür steht die Weltgesundheitsorganisation und wir als Bundesrepublik Deutschland gemeinsam mit den Partnern in der Europäischen Union und allen anderen Staaten auf der Welt sind committed dazu, diese Weltgesundheitsorganisation noch stärker werden zu lassen in den 20er Jahren.
Thank you so much. And vielen Dank, Jens. As I think everyone knows, Germany has been one of the leading lights in the fight against the pandemic globally. Under your leadership and that of Chancellor Merkel. Since 2020, Germany contributed close to $750 million to WHO, including more than $500 million to support the COVID-19 response. And as Minister said, Germany is the largest contributor to WHO. Germany was also one of the main drivers behind the formation of the Access to COVID-19 Tools Accelerator last year. And we're very grateful for the further contribution of 260 million euros and 30 million vaccine doses that Minister Spahn has just announced. We'll be signing the agreement under the WHO Strategic Preparedness and Response Plan after today's press conference. This support comes at a critical time, with cases and deaths increasing globally. So thank you so much again, Minister Spahn. Vielen Dank. As you know, the WHO Emergency Committee met yesterday and will publish its statement shortly. And I would like to thank Professor Didier Houssin, the chair of the committee, for his leadership and for joining us today. The committee has expressed concern that the pandemic is being mischaracterized as coming to an end when it's nowhere near finished. It has also warned about the strong likelihood for the emergence and global spread of new and possibly more dangerous variants of concern that may be even more challenging to control. The committee also expressed deep concern about the level of funding for WHO Strategic Preparedness and Response Plan for COVID-19, which constrains WHO's ability to coordinate the global response to the pandemic, particularly in terms of having the flexibility we need to move at the speed this virus moves. And the committee has called on all countries to support WHO's call to vaccinate at least 10% of the population of every country by the end of September. These donations announced by Germany today are another step towards reaching those targets. So my heartfelt thanks to Germany and vielen Dank again. But what I find even more encouraging is not just Germany's short-term support, but it is long-term vision. Together, we will end this pandemic, but our horizon must be further, and our ambition must be higher as we work together to prevent, detect, and respond rapidly to future outbreaks with pandemic potential. One of the clear lessons of this pandemic is that the world needs a strong and sustainably resourced WHO at the center of the global health architecture. Germany has been a driving force in advocating for a stronger WHO, but also in making it happen. You have truly walked the talk. And there is a big difference now between your visit last June and this time, almost a year. I also welcome Germany's support for the idea of an international pandemic treaty. Today, a working group of WHO member states is meeting to consider this idea and others to strengthen global health security. If the world continues down the same road, it will continue heading towards the same destination, which is an unsafe world, and another devastating pandemic is inevitable. We need a new approach and a new way of doing things. A treaty would provide a platform for closer international cooperation on preparedness, detection, and response. One key area in which improved cooperation is needed is in the way information about emerging pathogens and outbreaks is collected, analyzed, and disseminated. In May, Minister Spahn joined me to announce the creation of a new WHO hub for pandemic and epidemic intelligence in Berlin, which will open in September of this year. This new initiative will mark a step change in harnessing the power of modern technologies to give all countries the information they need more, better, faster, to keep their people safe. So thank you once again, Mr. Spahn. We're in a critical moment, not just in terms of this pandemic, but in terms of the future of global health security. Germany's support and collaboration is incredibly valuable. Thank you and vielen Dank. Before we move to questions, I would like to invite Professor Houssin to make a few remarks about the outcomes of yesterday's emergency committee. Professor Houssin, you have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Directeur Général, Monsieur le Ministre, chers collègues, Mesdames, Messieurs. Effectivement, la situation aujourd'hui, telle qu'elle est appréciée par le comité d'urgence, n'est pas bonne. Les tendances récentes sont préoccupantes. 18 mois après la déclaration d'une urgence de santé publique de portée internationale, nous continuons à courir après le virus et le virus continue à courir après nous. Et pour maintenir une approche globale, il est difficile face à un phénomène global, maintenir cette approche globale est un enjeu difficile à surmonter. En effet, la trajectoire du virus et les différences entre les États membres sont une source importante de cette difficulté. Alors, je remercie tout d'abord le secrétariat de l'OMS pour la qualité des informations qui ont été fournies au comité d'urgence et je remercie également les membres de ce comité pour les recommandations qu'ils ont pu exprimer aujourd'hui. Alors, ces recommandations sont de deux natures. Il y a des recommandations d'une part pour le secrétariat de l'OMS. Il est clair que le leadership reconnu, l'expertise technique de l'OMS est une donnée essentielle face à un événement de ce type. Nous n'avons qu'une seule organisation mondiale de la santé et c'est une entité qui a une vue globale, qui a les capacités techniques et le statut politique pour faire face à ce type d'événement. Pour cette raison, l'OMS doit continuer inlassablement à nous informer sur l'évolution de la situation et à présenter une mise à jour permanente de l'évolution de cette pandémie. Les deux principales recommandations qui sont formulées par le comité d'urgence à l'OMS lors de la séance hier sont de continuer à défendre inlassablement un accès équitable aux vaccins et une distribution équitable des vaccins dans le monde en encourageant le partage des doses, la production locale, la libération des droits de propriété intellectuelle, les transferts de technologies, la montée en puissance des capacités de production et bien sûr les financements nécessaires pour mettre en œuvre toutes ces activités. Il est également essentiel d'être très attentif à ne pas se laisser détourner par des initiatives qui pourraient aggraver l'inéquité dans l'accès aux vaccins. Je pense en particulier aux incitations dans certains pays à utiliser une booster dose, qu'on appelle booster dose, c'est-à-dire une troisième dose, alors qu'aujourd'hui les données scientifiques ne le justifient pas véritablement si l'on considère la situation au niveau mondial. La deuxième remarque concernant l'OMS, c'est de guider les États membres dans les complexités des mesures de santé publique fondées sur la science et sur le transport international fondé sur la science. Il est sûr que l'OMS peut apporter beaucoup de clarification dans cette situation complexe. Les recommandations s'adressent aussi aux États membres. Bien sûr, leur principale responsabilité concerne leur population, mais face à un événement de ce type, ils ont aussi, et je pense en particulier au gouvernement des États membres, une responsabilité globale, et je crois que le ministre de l'Allemagne vient de l'exprimer tout à fait clairement il y a quelques instants. La principale recommandation aux États membres est de reconnaître que l'accès aux vaccins et les mesures de santé publique et de réduction des distances sociales doivent être considérées sur un pied d'égalité. C'est la raison pour laquelle les deux principales recommandations, je ne vais pas rentrer dans la liste des recommandations, sont de continuer à utiliser la science pour mettre en œuvre des mesures de santé publique et sociale dans les différents États membres et mettre en œuvre également une approche des rassemblements qui soit fondée sur une analyse de risque. Il est important que si de grands rassemblements soient organisés, ils le soient avec le maximum de sécurité. La deuxième recommandation, c'est de soutenir l'OMS dans son appel à ce qu'au moins 10% de la population des différents États membres puisse avoir accès à la vaccination d'ici septembre 2021. Je vous remercie beaucoup de votre attention.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Professor, for your leadership. And now back to you, Christian.
Thank you very much, all. With this, we open the floor to questions, and of course, I would like to invite questions to our special guest here today. First, and I see first here on Andreas Rinke from Reuters, please. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you. Andreas Rinke from Reuters. I have one question to the General Director, please. Mr. Spahn just mentioned that he wants a further investigation of the origins of COVID. Do you see enough willingness of the part of Chinese government to do so? Und Herr Spahn, an Sie eine Frage. Sie haben erwähnt, dass Deutschland wahrscheinlich mehr als die 30 Millionen Impfdosen spenden wird für andere Staaten. Können Sie uns schon sagen, auf welchem Wege das dann sein wird? Durch COVAX oder durch bilaterale Verträge und dann für welche Länder? Danke.
Okay, thank you. On the, I think the question to me is the origins. As you know, we have done the phase 1, and the phase 1 have shown some progress, but there are also some challenges that has to be addressed. And one of the challenges is what you mentioned, access to raw data, especially the data, the start of the pandemic, the raw data was not shared. And now we have designed the second phase of the study, and we are asking actually China to be transparent, open, and cooperate, especially on the information raw data that we asked for at the early days of the pandemic. And we will be discussing with member states on the phase 2, and hope member states will help in guiding to address the challenges that I have already underlined among other things. Thank you, and to you, Minister.
Actually, in general, there are 3 lines we are working on. First one is short-term, to actually give doses that are not needed for our national campaign to COVAX. That's actually the way we prefer for most of the donations we do through COVAX, and some bilateral donations in addition, which might be around 20% of the whole quantity. These are mostly focused to the Western Balkans, to the Eastern Partnership like Ukraine, Namibia, and other countries actually we are in talks with, but 80% at least will go through COVAX. That's the commitment we made, and that will remain. If and how many doses we can add to the 30 millions, we will see in the upcoming weeks. We are lucky enough that our vaccination campaign is making good progress, so we will be able to give doses to other countries in need. Actually, our approach from the very beginning was we will bet on different horses, as I always said it, because no one of us knew actually which vaccine will really make it to approval. So we have contracts through the European Union with many of the different sellers, producers of vaccines. So actually there will be a surplus, and that one we want to share with the world. First step is 30 million. How many more, I can't tell you yet, but I'm very sure it will be more. Second line is the financial contribution we give to COVAX, the additional, or the 2.2 billion and 260 million as we will sign today to WHO of it. And the third one is the cooperation. That's more medium and long-term commitment. It's the cooperation with states, especially in Africa, that want to build up production capacities on their own. 99% of the vaccines used in Africa for all different diseases are not produced in Africa. And so we want to support, in good cooperation with companies like BioNTech or CureVac from Germany, we want to support other countries to build up production capacities, but obviously that is something for the mid and long term.
Thank you both very much. Next question goes to Corinne Gretler from Bloomberg. Corinne, please unmute yourself.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. I also have a question about the origin study, one for Mr. Tedros and one for Mr. Spahn. Is the lack of the raw data the biggest issue that's kind of hampering moving forward with the origin study? What are the other challenges? Yeah, and basically, you know, you say you're discussing this with member states and asking China to be transparent. Sometimes, I guess, you know, it feels a little bit like the momentum has lost steam and maybe fizzling out. I just kind of want to see, you know, what your take is on that, Mr. Spahn.
Okay. No, thank you very much. Starting from the last one you said, momentum, if momentum has been lost, I don't think so, because we need to really continue in order to, we need to continue to start the study in order to know what exactly happened. If we know what happened, then we can prevent future similar crises or problems. So it's basics. This is what we do when any outbreak happens. Forget about a pandemic of this proportion, unprecedented. Even in any outbreak, you go and understand the origins, and we need to know what happened in order to prevent the next one. But there is the other part of it, especially considering the unprecedented nature of this pandemic, the number of people that died and the number of people that suffered. Take the number of deaths alone, more than 4 million. I think we owe it to them to know what happened. And everybody should cooperate to know what happened and to prevent the same crisis from happening again. And that's why we need cooperation. And then to the challenges, of course, one is, with regard, one challenge, one problem is sharing raw data. And I said it at the conclusion of the first phase that there is this problem and it has to be addressed. And the second is there was a premature push to, especially reduce one of the options, like the lab theory. As you know, I was a lab technician myself. I'm an immunologist, and I have worked in the lab. And lab accidents happen. It's common. I have seen it happening, and I myself had errors. So it can happen. And checking what happened, especially in our labs, is important. And we need information, direct information on what the situation of these labs was before and at the start of the pandemic. Then if we get full information, we can exclude that. So one of the challenges, again, is, a challenge of access and also transparency with regard to the hypotheses that are put. So I hope, because of these two things, there will be better cooperation. The two things I said, one, knowing, understanding what happened can help us to prevent the problem from happening in the future. But second, I think we owe it to the millions who suffered and to the millions who died really to understand what happened. And I hope there will be better cooperation. And we have continued the engagement with China and also with member states. And there will be a better cooperation to get into the bottom of what happened. Minister?
Well, first of all, I absolutely agree with what was just said. 2 days ago, in a discussion in Frankfurt, the city of Frankfurt, a 7-year-old girl actually asked me, where did it come from? And I could not give her a final answer. And I think we just need to know where it came from. Of course, we all have theories, and the one of that there is zoonotic based to it all makes sense, but nevertheless, we really need to know how it happened, just to learn from it and to prevent it, or to be better able to prevent it for the future. And so we do appreciate the cooperation of the Chinese government so far for the first mission, but that's not yet enough, obviously. Like the G7 leaders called on more investigations, we fully support this, and so we can just call on China to intensify the cooperation to examine the origin of this virus, to learn for the future, but as Tedros just said, we owe it to the people.
Thank you very much, both. The next question goes to Nina Lammers from RTL NTV. Nina, please unmute yourself.
Vielen Dank. Eine Frage an den Bundesgesundheitsminister Jens Spahn. Neben der Spende von Geld und Impfdosen wäre es ja noch eine dritte Säule, wie man arme Länder unterstützen könnte, nämlich wenn man die Patentrechte für die Impfstoffe vorübergehend aussetzen würde. Die WHO hat sich diesbezüglich schon mehrfach positiv geäußert. Die Bundesregierung ist da bislang zurückhaltend. Jetzt hören wir vom Bundesaußenminister Heiko Maas, der auf einer Reise in den USA vor 2 Tagen war, dass er da durchaus offen ist. Können wir von der Bundesregierung erwarten, dass sie ihre Haltung bezüglich der Lockerung der Patentrechte oder der vorübergehenden Aussetzung ändert? Und wenn ja, warum? Und wenn nein, warum nicht? And one question to Dr. Tedros. How much would you appreciate if Germany changed its mind concerning the property rights on COVID-19 vaccines? And also another question to both of you. Some people say that the imbalance between the rich and the poor countries is now increasing as the rich countries are now giving third vaccines, like for example Israel and also Germany might do it soon. So do you think the imbalance will grow between the rich and the poor countries? Do you agree to that opinion? Thank you.
Also was die deutsche Position angeht, zur Frage von Patenten bei Impfstoffen, hat die sich grundsätzlich nicht verändert. Ich finde, wir müssen andersrum diskutieren. Was ist das Ziel? Und das Ziel ist, schnellstmöglich die Welt zu impfen, allen Menschen auf der Welt Zugang zu Impfstoffen möglich zu machen. Und dann ist die nächste Frage, wie erreichen wir dieses Ziel am besten? Und was ja sehr offenkundig ist, einfach nur ein Patent zu haben oder zu öffnen, löst ja das eigentliche Problem nicht. Dafür ist Impfstoffproduktion zu komplex. Es braucht Technologietransfer, es braucht den Austausch von Experten, die Schulung. Selbst Pharmaunternehmen, die phasenweise involviert waren in die Entwicklung dieser Impfstoffe, brauchten Monate, um dann entsprechende Produktions- oder Fill-and-Finish-Kapazitäten aufzubauen. Und deswegen geht aus unserer Sicht die Debatte am eigentlichen Problem vorbei. Es ist eine Debatte, die man mit auch viel ideologischer Hingabe sehr grundsätzlich führen kann. Die eigentliche Frage, die uns wichtig ist, ist die, wie bekommen wir schnellstmöglich möglichst viel Produktion von Impfstoffen für die Welt hin, insbesondere auch von mRNA-Impfstoffen, nicht nur, aber auch. Und die Unternehmen kooperieren ja. BioNTech, Pfizer sind ja bereit und haben schon begonnen zu kooperieren mit anderen Unternehmen auf der Welt. Ich hatte die Gelegenheit, mit Präsident Macron von Frankreich in Südafrika in Gesprächen dabei zu sein. Und Frankreich und Deutschland zusammen mit der Europäischen Union, wir wollen die Afrikanische Union, die Länder Afrikas unterstützen in dem Aufbau von Produktionskapazitäten für Impfstoffe, übrigens nicht nur für Covid-19, sondern auch darüber hinaus. Und das macht aus unserer Sicht den entscheidenden Unterschied, dass wir jetzt schnell Produktionskapazitäten aufbauen. Mein Eindruck ist übrigens, das gelingt auch. Wir werden so schnell wie nie zuvor in der Lage sein, im Laufe der nächsten Monate Millionen, Hunderte Millionen von Menschen auf der Welt, und zwar allen Teilen der Welt, zu impfen. Und wir werden alles dafür tun, dass das auch schnellstmöglich weiter vorangetrieben wird. Die Frage der dritten Impfung, der Boosterimpfung im Verhältnis zu Erstimpfungen in anderen Ländern. Ich habe gerade Südafrika erwähnt. Als ich dort war, vor 4, 5 Wochen, hatten wir in Deutschland eine Diskussion darüber, ob wir 13- oder 15-Jährige nun impfen oder nicht, weil die Zulassung gerade da war für den mRNA-Impfstoff. Und es ist schon eine Situation, wo man merkt, wie privilegiert wir in Europa sind, in einem Land zu sein, wo noch nicht die Möglichkeit war, auch nur 1% der Bevölkerung zu impfen. Und gleichzeitig diskutieren wir in Europa, in Deutschland darüber, die 12- oder 15-Jährigen zu impfen. Das zeigt, in welcher privilegierten Situation wir sind. Und deswegen muss man das auch offen und auch kritisch, wie Herr Professor Husseini es gerade gesagt hat, natürlich diskutieren. Aus meiner Sicht brauchen wir aber beides, auch um Akzeptanz zu behalten. Wir impfen die Welt aus eigenem Interesse, aus humanitären Gründen, aber auch aus eigenem Interesse. Aber es braucht eben auch Akzeptanz und dafür muss die Impfkampagne in den Ländern, die geben, gut laufen und erfolgreich sein und gleichzeitig die Impfversorgung für die Welt aufgebaut werden. Und ich möchte, dass beides geht, dass wir denjenigen, die sie brauchen, eine dritte Impfung anbieten können und allen eine erste.
Thank you very much. And I'm looking around, maybe Mike Ryan wants to add.
Me then. Okay. No, thank you. On vaccines, will the divide increase or improve? Will it deteriorate further or improve the imbalance? My answer is it's in our hands. If we commit to sharing and the targets we have already set, the 10% by September, 40% by December, and the 70%, we believe that especially those countries who have access to vaccines and who have the manufacturing capacity or who have the economic capacity, I think can support in making it happen. So the imbalance can be reversed. We have the tools and we know how to address this problem, so we can address it. It's in our hands. But for this to happen, there should be a real commitment, especially from G20 countries or G20 plus, because most of the capacity is in those countries. Then going to the IP, on the IP, as you know, especially at the start, what we were advocating for was increasing the production and fair distribution. And we have said it many times, actually. AstraZeneca followed that line, especially commitment to voluntary licensing, and started making agreements with India, with Korea. India and Korea are producing AstraZeneca. And now Australia, Japan, Thailand are also producing soon. And we expect more countries. If the other companies have done the same thing, we could have better volume to share. So at the end of the day, the issue is, how do we have an enough pie to share? So if it was addressed using voluntary licensing, or the hub we used, the patent hub, if they contributed their technology to that hub and then production increased and we have better pie to share, there was no need even to raise the IP if there was enough to share. The problem now is, after pushing in that direction, there was no response except from one company, basically. And because of that, there is a problem now. There is a market failure. There is a market failure. So when there is a market failure, there should be someone who should intervene to address it. So those who will intervene to address it will be those who have the capacity in manufacturing capacity, or those who have the multinational companies. And one way to do it is the IP waiver. And that's why we're pushing for IP waiver. But when we say IP waiver, it's not to really snatch the property of the private sector. As WHO, we really appreciate the private sector for what they have done. It's a historic record to have a vaccine in less than a year, and they have to be appreciated. And at the same time, not only appreciation, when we ask for IP waiver, the proposal from WHO is the high-income countries can take or can give some incentives to those companies as part of their stimulus package. So that could really help them to address any financial losses that they may have. So the incentive could be one. On the other hand, the companies have social responsibility as well, because this pandemic is unprecedented, and it has happened almost after 100 years. And the IP waiver is, the provisions for IP waiver was to use it during this unprecedented situation or emergency situation. So having, some social responsibility from the companies will be important. And from the parties who are now negotiating in WTO, I think there could be a balance, especially if there is an agreement in IP waiver, it could be for a limited period. For instance, instead of opening it without any limited period, it could be for a year or two, and it could be for a specific product like the vaccine. So there could be a balance that can help address some of the challenges, but at the same time moving forward. So at the end of the day, though, the key is making sure that we have enough vaccines to achieve those targets. If I take the highest target, which we want to achieve by mid next year, is the 70%. And vaccination of 70% of the population would really help us to control this virus and open our society. The whole world is sick and tired, and I think we need to really have a commitment to that 70%, so we have enough vaccination to open up the world and we have our lives and livelihoods back. Thank you, Christian. Mike? Okay.
Thank you both. Next question goes to Priti Patnaik from Geneva Health Files. Priti, please unmute yourself.
Good afternoon. Thank you for taking my question. This is for the Minister. It follows up on the previous question. The leadership of Germany in global health and specifically at WHO is acknowledged. But how do you reconcile the position of Germany, in opposition to the TRIPS waiver? One could argue that there's some kind of a discordance between health and trade interests within Germany. That doesn't seem like a position of leadership as far as the TRIPS waiver is concerned. How would you explain that? Thank you.
I'm still practicing with this micro, but now it's working. Thank you very much. Actually, again, what we say is, let's talk about what we want to achieve. And what we want to achieve is that all citizens on the world have access to vaccines, affordable access to vaccines. And then the question is, how is that reached? And we don't think that only changing TRIP waiver or the framework here, or to open it up, or even to enforce something there would really make that difference. Because you need tech transfer. That's one of the most complex things on the world you can try to produce is a vaccine, especially now with this new technology of mRNA. And so you definitely need cooperation. Just having a patent, a waiver, does not solve the problem. And what we do see is that the companies are willing to cooperate. I'm almost in a weekly discussion with the companies that we have contracts with, and we push them to cooperate, and they do with other countries on the world, with other companies on the world to produce even more. And I wouldn't wonder if in the next year we will have more or less an overcapacity of mRNA production, which is good actually, then we have enough, but there are so many corporations on the way that actually what we want to reach, what we want to achieve can be achieved without inflicting with these waiver regulation that is there. And I mean, Tedros just made it clear. These were companies, these were people with their research, with their engagement for years, by the way. It was not invented within some months. This was a 10, 15 years journey to develop this mRNA technology that is now for the first time used for this vaccine. That should be appreciated. And of course, you appreciate it by intellectual property. And so if we would not be able to reach the goal without this debate of how to change the TRIPS approach and patent waivers, then we would be on the way with you or with many others. But we can reach it without. So why put this burden of this ideological debate on this? Instead, we should just solve the problem and bring vaccines to the people.
Thank you very much, Minister. Next question goes to Hagen Strauß from Rheinische Post. Hagen, please unmute yourself.
Ja, vielen Dank, dass ich die Frage stellen darf. Eine Frage an den Herrn Generaldirektor. Minister Spahn hat ja an andere Länder appelliert, mehr Finanzmittel zur Verfügung zu stellen. Würden Sie sich diesem Appell anschließen und an welche Länder würden Sie ihn richten?
Thank you very much. So more funding, I fully agree, and thank you so much to Germany and Minister Spahn for walking the talk. Not only they're asking other countries to contribute, but also they have increased their contribution in the last 2 years very, very significantly. And then the other part is not only increasing funding, but at the same time flexible funding. The bulk of funding we get from Germany is flexible, and we really appreciate that. So when we ask for funding, it has to be more, but at the same time flexible. Then on which countries? We're asking actually all countries to contribute. As you know, we have a working group now composed of member states. It's chaired by a German colleague, Björn Kummel, and it has been there for some months now. And one of the recommendations actually they're putting together is increase in assessed contribution. And if it's assessed contribution, then many countries, almost all member states, will be involved, and that would be a very important development or progress. But in addition to that, we will continue to need voluntary contributions, like what we're signing now with Germany today. And this will be specifically with countries, G20, plus some countries who have better economic capacity to provide. So I think if I tailor the request to specific, it will be a G7, G20, and some countries out of G20, but who have good capability to finance. So I can say G20 plus would be, I think, the target. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Director General. Next question goes to Laurent Serrault from Swiss News Agency. Laurent, please unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you for taking my question. Question to Minister Spahn. Federal Chancellor Merkel said that Germany won't go for a mandatory vaccination of health workers and critical people as France decided to do. And it seems now that every European country is facing the period where they have to convince the most skeptical part within the population. So what kind of new concrete steps are you going to take in the next few months in order to convince these people to reach that part of the population? Thank you.
Das stimmt, das ist eine Situation, in der jetzt viele der Impfkampagnen also in vielen Ländern kommen und ich glaube irgendwann wahrscheinlich in allen Ländern nach und nach. Zuerst werden diejenigen geimpft, die natürlich unbedingt geimpft werden wollen, die sich aktiv bemühen um eine Impfung, die auch gut erreicht werden können. Wir erreichen jetzt die Phase, wie andere Länder auch, wo es um diejenigen geht, die sich nicht aktiv bemühen, die aber erreicht werden können, mit der Gelegenheit, mit dem Angebot, mit der Information. Und deswegen wollen wir gemeinsam mit im föderalen Deutschland, den Bundesländern, aber vor allem auch den Städten und Gemeinden, mit Vereinen, mit Verbänden, die Bundesliga ist bereit mitzumachen, um ein Beispiel aus Deutschland zu nehmen, sehr niedrigschwellige Angebote machen, Sportplatz, Marktplatz, neben der Kirche, neben der Moschee und möglichst viele überzeugen, Gelegenheit macht Impfung. Das ist sozusagen das Motto in dieser Phase der Kampagne. Und was sehr, sehr wichtig ist, Impfen ist der Weg zurück in die Freiheit, in die Normalität, aber Impfen ist auch Schutz für das Gesundheitswesen. Wir haben gerade eine Diskussion darüber, dass Impfen doch eine sehr persönliche Entscheidung ist, das stimmt, aber es ist eine Entscheidung, die auch andere betrifft. Denn jeder Einzelne, der sich impfen lässt, schützt eben nicht nur sich, er schützt auch andere. Und jeder Einzelne, der sich nicht impfen lässt und ein Risiko eingeht, krank zu werden, schwer zu erkranken, am Ende sind es Pflegekräfte, Ärztinnen und Ärzte, andere, die sich dann um ihn oder sie kümmern. Und insofern ist die Frage, ob man sich impfen lässt oder nicht, ja, eine individuelle Entscheidung, aber eine Entscheidung, die immer auch andere betrifft. Und diesen Teil werden wir jetzt in der Kampagne sehr, sehr deutlich machen.
Herzlichen Dank. Thank you very much, Minister Spahn. With this, we reached the end of our press briefing. I thank all very much. And before I give the floor to Dr. Tedros for closing, I'll invite Dr. Mike Ryan for some closing remarks on Dr. Ryan.
Thank you, Christian. And greetings, Minister Spahn, welcome. I remember the first time we met was frontline of an Ebola response together. And it shows, again, the commitment of Germany to seeing what happens and goes on the ground and the realities of epidemic containment in the front line. Again, just to note that Germany is the largest contributor to the contingency fund for emergencies that WHO maintains, which represents the fastest, globally the fastest response mechanism financially to emergencies. And we continue to use that fund day in, day out. This increases the speed, efficiency, effectiveness and life-saving quality of our interventions. Secondly, just again, the collaboration we're currently working on for the WHO Pandemic Intelligence Hub in Berlin is superb. And we have a huge opportunity together to build with other partners from all around the world the sort of platform that will take us forward from to another level, a completely different level on our ability to collect, analyse and develop insights from ever more complex data from multiple sources. And I think it leverages off really the Berlin and its environment, which has really established itself globally as a leader in this field. And we hope that this collaboration will lead to better tools, better data, better decisions and better outcomes for people during epidemics and future. And just one final word on the origins studies. I wanted to come in at the time. Because there was a question about continuity in phase 1 and phase 2. And I think it's important to recognise that the phase 1 studies were carried out by a hugely dedicated, tremendously courageous, massively patient group of international scientists who came together at the invitation of the Director General and worked tirelessly under incredible pressure, incredible duress, and produced a high-quality report that represents the basis on which we can now move forward into phase 2. It's important to recognise, too, that they have built important relationships and trust with equally competent Chinese scientists and counterparts on the other side. Those scientists and the further scientists that we will involve as we try to build a more formal and standardised and collective approach to origin studies. I think one thing we've all learned in this process, the issue of the origins of viruses, as we've all seen, are not purely scientific. There are other issues that come to bear, and we need to recognise those in future, and we need to create a safe and permanent space in which the science and the understanding, as the DG said, we need to understand the origins because we need to know how to prevent the next one. But we also have to recognise that we live in a real world, and we have to try and create the platforms in which science can be successful, also recognising the realities of the world around that science. The DG has done it before. Myself, Maria, many others here would like to do it again to thank the team of scientists on our side and our own WHO staff who participated and supported not only the phase 1 studies, but all of the work that went in before, all of the work that has gone in since in order to design the next phase of studies. We look forward to working with our Chinese counterparts on that process, and the Director General will outline measures to Member States, I believe, Katharina, tomorrow, on Friday. Tomorrow is Friday, I lose track of the days around here. In order to create a more stable and predictable process moving forward as we seek the answers that the Director General has laid out. But again, to say, we very much, this organisation depends so much on the quality of the scientists in all of your organisations, and they have done their job superbly, as I said, under a very challenging conditions. And the DG has outlined those challenges and is very clear in what needs to improve. But that issue does not lie at the foot of the scientists who did this work.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ryan. Before I give for the closing remarks to Dr. Tedros, we'll be sending the audio files and the remarks of our special guests and Dr. Tedros right after the press conference. The full transcript will be posted again tomorrow morning on our website. Dr. Tedros.
Thank you. So I don't need to have another summary to do, so I concur with Mike. And then I would like also to thank Jens, my friend, for joining us, and also appreciation to all the support from you and Germany, and vielen Dank. Then to Professor Ussa, for your leadership, sir, thank you so much for leading the emergency committee, and I hope the recommendations will help address some of the challenges we're facing now. And I would like to thank the media. We have, I think, colleagues from Germany this time. Thank you for joining. Vielen Dank. And see you in our upcoming press conference. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jens.